The alarm didn't sound like it did in drills. It was harsher, slower, like the building was clearing its throat before screaming. People poured into the lobby. Pajamas, robes, business suits half-buttoned, mothers with strollers, dogs barking, phones in the air, filming nothing helpful. The smell of smoke hung low, not thick, but real, and enough. A woman screamed, not because of fire, but because no one knew where to go. The elevators had locked. The emergency stairwell doors wouldn't open. One man kicked them. Another cried into his phone. "It's not working. The door's jammed. We can't get out." In the corner of the lobby, the security guard stood still. Black jacket, patch on his arm, key ring on his belt, eyes calm, breathing even. No radio, no panic, no orders barked. He simply turned, walked toward a panel no one had noticed before, behind a fake wall, unlabeled, unremarkable. He opened it with a key none of them knew existed, pressed 3 buttons, typed something. The stairwell doors clicked, unlocked. The fans kicked on. Smoke began pulling away through the vents. The system, whatever it was, knew him. No one clapped. No one cheered. They were too busy flooding into the stairs, too stunned to ask. But a few looked back. Not all, just enough. And in their eyes, the question they'd never thought to ask. Who is he, really? He didn't answer, didn't explain. He just turned back toward his post, sat down behind the desk, and waited, like nothing had happened. Like if you've ever watched someone stay calm when the world went sideways. Comment if you've ever been underestimated and didn't need to prove a thing. Share this with someone who knew what to do when it mattered. He arrived at 5:47 every morning. Shift didn't start until 6, but he liked the stillness before the building woke up, before the espresso machines hissed, before the elevator chimes echoed, before anyone had the chance to ignore him. The lobby smelled like lemon cleaner and expensive fabric, marble floors, glass walls, a reception desk so polished you could check your teeth in it. He wiped it anyway, not because it was dirty, because clean things stayed cleaner when you kept caring for them, even when no one else did. His name tag said, Thomas Security, but no one used his name. They said, "Hey, you, can you buzz me in? Where's the delivery room again? I forgot my key, sorry." They didn't sound sorry. He answered every time, without sighing, without flinching. He was used to it. At 6:05, the building manager walked past him without a word. Her stilettos clicked across the floor like punctuation. At 6:14, the fitness trainer breezed in, Bluetooth in one ear, sunglasses still on indoors. "Can you tell maintenance the AC's low again?" "No, good morning." "No, please." He nodded. She didn't wait to see if he responded. At 7:03, a man in a suit laughed into his phone as he stepped into the elevator. "Yeah, the guy at the desk. No idea what he actually does. He just sits there like a statue." Thomas heard it, didn't react. Not because he didn't feel it, but because he'd heard worse. He'd been called worse. And not just behind his back. By 8 o'clock, the lobby became a hallway. People passed through him like he was part of the furniture. He opened the service entrance for caterers, logged packages, buzzed in a dog walker who never made eye contact. He didn't mind the silence, but sometimes he wondered how many of them would even notice if he didn't show up. Except for the girl. Apartment 5D, 10 years old, pink sneakers, always carrying a book too big for her backpack. She waved, every day, no matter what. Sometimes she even said, "Hi, Mr. Thomas." Sometimes her mom scolded her, "Don't distract him, baby, he's working." But Thomas always waved back. It meant something, even if it came from someone who couldn't yet spell condescend. Lunchtime was quiet. He never left the desk. Microwaved rice and greens from home. A plastic container that didn't quite seal. Steam rising like memory. He ate slow, like the taste was trying to tell him something he'd forgotten. At 2 o'clock, a resident stormed down because their Uber couldn't get through the gate. At 2:15, another complained about a package delay, as if he personally rerouted the mail. At 3:45, A delivery guy tried to skip the sign-in log. Thomas stopped him gently. Name, unit. The guy rolled his eyes. Man, why are you so strict? Thomas didn't answer, because there was no point explaining that some people had to be strict, just to be taken seriously. At 5 o'clock, the doorman for the sister building came over during his break. Slim guy, new to the job. He asked, "You ever get tired of being invisible?" Thomas sipped water from a thermos. "I'm not invisible. Could have fooled me." Thomas looked at him. "They just think you're part of the door. But that's where they get it wrong." "How so?" "The door opens from our side." He didn't mean it as poetry, just fact. When his shift ended, Thomas didn't rush. He cleaned his area, logged the end-of-day notes, turned off the secondary panel lights. No one noticed. He walked past the same residents who had seen him all day. Some nodded. Most didn't. But the girl from 5D waved again. Big, like it mattered. "Bye, Mr. Thomas." He smiled. "See you tomorrow." At home, Thomas changed into soft clothes, washed his hands slowly, fed the cat. Then he sat by the window and opened a worn black notebook. Blueprints, diagrams, numbers handwritten in ink that had faded with time. Not doodles, not hobbies, original plans of the building he worked in, the very one, drawn by his own hand, years ago, before he was the doorman. Before the crash, before the silence, he studied the sketches the way some people read scripture, because in those lines, he remembered something others had forgotten. He had built the thing they now thought he barely belonged in, and no one knew. Not the woman in stilettos, not the man with the Bluetooth headset, not the resident who shouted about his Uber. But he knew, and one day, they might need him again, not to buzz them in, not to sign a package, but to hold the structure together, literally. Until then, he stayed at his post. Still, sharp, steady. The building could forget him. The people could overlook him. But he hadn't forgotten a single pipe, vent, or fail-safe coded into its bones. Because some people wear uniforms, and some people wear memory. Fridays were always worse. People were in a hurry to stop pretending they weren't tired. The suits were tighter, the complaints louder, the small talk even more hollow. Thomas had already redirected 2 deliveries, buzzed in a dog groomer, and reset the freight elevator twice by the time 10 a.m. rolled around. Then he heard the voice. Sharp, familiar. "You. Hello. Hey." He looked up. Unit 11B. Mr. Raymond Carter, mid-40s. Silicon Valley money. Always dressed like he was about to jog, even though he never broke a sweat. He waved his phone in the air like it was an emergency flare. "You mind doing your job today?" Thomas didn't react. "My dry cleaning. It's not in the delivery room, and I signed for it 2 hours ago." Thomas checked the log. Looks like it was scanned, but the delivery guy never dropped it off. Raymond rolled his eyes. "So it just vanished? What are you here for then? Decoration?" Thomas didn't answer, didn't flinch. He was used to this man, the type who confused service with servitude. But today, Raymond wasn't done. A woman passed by, holding a toddler. Raymond gestured toward Thomas. "Honestly, this guy, he's like furniture with a security patch. Stares at the screen all day. Probably can't even spell half the names in the directory." The woman looked uncomfortable, smiled tightly, hurried away. Raymond smirked. "Right? You know I'm not wrong." Thomas stood, slowly, not threatening, not aggressive, just upright, full height. He walked around the desk, stood in front of Raymond. Raymond took half a step back without realizing it. Thomas spoke, voice low and even. "Would you like me to call the delivery service for you?" Raymond blinked. "What? Yeah, whatever. I'll do that. But please don't speak to me like that again. Not here. Not anywhere." The tone wasn't angry, but something in it made the room feel smaller. Raymond opened his mouth, closed it, looked around, and noticed that 3 other residents had stopped mid-conversation. They were watching. They had heard. Thomas turned, walked back to his desk, picked up the phone. Calm, efficient. Raymond stood there a beat too long. then left without another word. Later that afternoon, the woman with the toddler came back down. "Hey," she said gently. "Sorry about earlier. That guy's a jerk." Thomas smiled. "It's okay." "No, it's not. I just wanted to say thank you for handling that the way you did." He nodded. "Have a good day." She paused, then added, "I'm glad you're here." He didn't respond, but the words settled somewhere deep, somewhere that remembered all the times people walked past like he was glass. That night, Thomas stayed a few minutes past shift, not because he had to, because he needed to clear his head. He sat behind the desk, looked out at the now empty lobby, and thought about how quickly people forget what makes a building stand. It's not the floors, not the marble, not the elevator that says penthouse in brushed gold. It's the people who know where the circuit breakers are, who hear the sounds the walls make when something's wrong, who remember the original wiring, not the upgraded facade. He opened the notebook again, the same one from before. This time, he flipped to a different page. A full diagram of the building's secondary emergency system, a system only 3 people in the company ever truly understood. He had designed it, supervised its installation, tested every inch, until the accident, until the contract dispute, until his name was removed from the credits, but not from the structure. He still knew how to restart the entire fire suppression grid manually, still knew the override codes, still knew what every silent red light meant, and nobody else did. That night, he added a note in the margin of the blueprint. One line, still operational, but only just. A warning, a whisper, to himself, because one day, the building might forget how to protect itself, and someone would need to remember. The next morning, a sticky note appeared on his desk, not signed, not elaborate, just 6 words. "You handled that with real grace." He didn't know who left it, didn't ask. He folded it carefully, placed it between 2 pages of the notebook, filed it next to steel beams and sensor wires, because kindness, like structure, needed a place to live too. The first sign was small, just a flicker. Lights in the lobby blinked twice, paused, came back on. Most people didn't notice, or blamed the weather, or Wi-Fi. Thomas noticed. He always did. He glanced at the small panel behind the desk. One red light, steady, not blinking, which meant it wasn't a glitch. It was a warning. 20 minutes later, it happened again. This time, the elevators stalled. Mid-floor, doors refused to open. 3 calls came in at once. "We're stuck." "Hello? What's going on? Is this a power outage?" But the power was fine. The issue was deeper, older. One of the backup systems had failed, and the new staff had no idea what it meant. The building manager showed up 5 minutes late, flustered, holding a tablet she didn't understand. "It says it's error code 41D. That's not possible. We had maintenance last month." The new guy from tech support shrugged. "That's not in our documentation." Thomas stood quietly behind the desk, watching, listening, waiting. The residents gathered, some annoyed, some anxious. One man joked, "Hey, maybe your security guy can fix it." The others laughed, not kindly. Thomas didn't. He just walked around the desk and headed toward the service corridor. No one stopped him, because no one noticed. Behind a gray steel door marked authorized personnel only, he used a key no one remembered he had, opened the old access panel. The original one, not the digital upgrade. Wires like veins, switches like old bones. He ran his fingers over them like a piano he hadn't played in years. Still remembered every note. Upstairs, voices got louder. The manager argued with tech support. The elevators were still frozen. The fire code required a manual release, but no one could find the override, because it wasn't digital. It was analog, buried in the wall before the renovations, and the only person who knew where it was already standing in front of it. Thomas flipped 2 switches, pressed a small recessed button no one could see unless they were looking for it. A low hum filled the corridor. The red light turned green. The elevators jolted. Doors opened. People spilled out. some dazed, some relieved. The tech support guy blinked at his screen. "It's working, but I didn't do anything." The manager radioed in. "Systems are back. No idea how, but we're good." She didn't thank anyone, just moved on. But a few residents started asking, "What happened? Who fixed it?" No one had an answer until the woman from 5D said, "I think it was Mr. Thomas." They looked at her, then at him, standing behind the desk again, quiet, still, like he'd never moved. A few days later, someone knocked on the desk, politely. A man from 9C. Suit, tie, the type who usually didn't notice the staff unless his coffee was late. "Hey, I heard you got the system back up during that elevator thing." Thomas nodded once. "That's right. How'd you know what to do?" Thomas looked at him. Not smug, not challenging, just honest. "I designed it." The man blinked. "You what?" "I was the structural systems engineer during initial construction, before the company changed hands, before they downsized." "Wait, like this building?" "This building." Silence. Then, "Holy shit." The man left, but the story didn't. It moved, through whispers, through texts. Someone pulled up an old archived city permit. There it was. Project engineer, T.H. Collier. Thomas Henry Collier. The same name on the badge, just printed smaller now. That night, someone left a folded page at the front desk. Old blueprint copy. Circle around the emergency system. 2 words written in pen. "Thank you." No name, but Thomas smiled, folded the page, tucked it into his notebook, right next to the sketch he'd drawn of that very system 15 years ago. From then on, the lobby changed. Not loudly, not quickly, but enough. People nodded more, spoke his name instead of just "hey." Some even asked questions, genuine ones, about the building, about its systems, about things they assumed just worked, because now they knew someone had built it, and he was still right there, watching, keeping it alive. One afternoon, a woman from 5D brought him a drawing, crayon, purple and green, stick figure at a desk, big smile, caption in wobbly print. "Mr. Thomas is the boss of the building." He laughed, genuinely, taped it behind the desk, right next to the emergency contacts sheet, because sometimes the truest recognition comes from the smallest voice. Marcus started working at Westbridge Residences 2 months ago. 19, fresh out of high school. No college plans. Not yet. He mopped floors, took out trash, cleared service elevators when residents complained something smelled weird. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a job, a solid one. And besides, it let him be invisible, which in some ways felt safer. He noticed Thomas on his first day. Old guy, security badge, always early, always quiet, didn't talk much, didn't joke around with the others, just sat behind that glossy desk like part of the architecture. Marcus assumed he was harmless, the kind of man who once tried something bigger, didn't make it, and settled for a quiet uniform and a quiet life. He'd seen it before. Black men of a certain age, respectable, polite, forgotten. But then came the day with the water pipe. Mid-shift, 3:22 p.m. A maintenance alert buzzed Marcus's phone. Leak detected, B2 corridor. He sighed, elevator down again. Probably a busted valve. Grabbed gloves, grabbed keys, expected to find a puddle. Instead, he found a flood. Water poured down the walls near the back generator room. A pipe had burst, not just cracked, burst. Wires sparked. Steam clouded the hall. Marcus froze. Radioed in. No one answered. He stepped back, panic creeping in. The building's core systems were just beyond that room. If the water hit the wrong panel, he didn't even want to finish the thought. Then Thomas appeared. Out of nowhere. No panic. No wasted movement. He stepped past Marcus like he already knew what was happening and what came next. "Where's the cutoff?" Marcus asked, voice shaking. Thomas didn't answer. Just walked to a small panel. Unmarked. covered by a metal plate Marcus had never noticed. Thomas pulled out a screwdriver, loosened 4 rusted bolts, reached inside, flipped one small lever. The water slowed, then stopped. Steam hissed, then cleared. Silence followed. Marcus stared, mouth open. "How the hell did you?" Thomas looked at him. "Calm. Kind. They rerouted the main shutoff in 2008. After a remodel. Nobody updated the maps." "But how'd you know that?" Thomas wiped his hands. "I helped design the original system. Still remember where the bones are buried." He started walking away. Marcus followed. Wait, you designed this place." "Parts of it. And now you're just on desk duty." Thomas smiled. "No such thing as just. I'm exactly where I need to be." That night, Marcus couldn't stop thinking about it. About how casually Thomas had saved the electrical core of the building. About how nobody had seen it. No cameras. No applause. Just quiet action. Precise. Decisive. Done. The next day, Marcus found a reason to stop by the desk. Just to talk. "You always this chill?" Thomas looked up. "Not always." "So why stay here? You could be doing a lot more, right?" Thomas tilted his head. "Maybe. But not everything that matters gets listed in a job description." Marcus thought about that. Let it sink. "You ever think people don't notice? Or care?" "Sure. But that's never been the point." "Then what is?" Thomas tapped the desk once. "When things go wrong, people don't ask who's most popular. They ask who can fix it." Marcus nodded slowly. There was a weight to that. Not heavy in a bad way. Just real. From that day forward, Marcus saw the building differently. He noticed which doors stuck in humidity, which panels buzzed slightly too loud, which residents took their shoes off in the elevator, which ones never tipped. He started carrying a small notebook, jotted down what he saw, what worked, what didn't. Thomas noticed, didn't say anything, but one day passed Marcus a pen, metal, weighted, good grip. "Don't lose that," he said. Marcus didn't. Weeks passed. They didn't talk every day, but when they did, it mattered. Not lectures, not advice, just fragments of memory dropped like breadcrumbs. Elevator 3 pulls left if overloaded. The fire panel isn't wired in sequence. Don't trust the lights. Storm drains back up near the service exit when the wind's out of the west. It was like learning a new language, a quiet one, built of observation and intention. And for the first time in his short life, Marcus started to feel like maybe he wasn't just passing time. Maybe he was learning something that would outlast the job. Maybe he was watching someone do work that didn't scream to be seen, but deserved to be remembered. Late one evening, after the building emptied, Marcus stayed behind, cleaned a little slower, took the long way back through the lower hall, stopped at the desk. Thomas was still there, reading something. Marcus hesitated, then said, "You ever get tired of not being noticed?" Thomas didn't look up. "Sometimes. So why keep showing up?" Thomas closed the book, met his eyes. "Because one day, when it all goes wrong, they'll realize I've been here all along, and I won't need to say a word." That hit. Marcus nodded, didn't say anything more, just tapped the desk twice, and walked on. The smoke came from the ceiling vents, thin at first, barely a trace, like a kitchen mishap. But Thomas knew better. The scent wasn't burnt toast. It was electrical, coated in plastic and metal, the kind that signals something deeper, something dangerous. By the time the fire alarm activated, the smoke had reached the elevator shaft. People in the lobby looked up, confused. The manager rushed out of her office, tapping her screen uselessly. "It's not showing anything on the panel. Is this a false alarm?" Thomas didn't answer. He was already standing, already moving. Upstairs, a siren began to pulse. Not a wail. A stuttering tone that seemed unsure whether to scream or whisper. Doors opened. People poured out, phones in hand, shoes half on, voices rising. "What's going on? Is this real? Why aren't the elevators working?" Because they weren't supposed to. In fire scenario, The lift shut down. Only the stairwells were viable. Only the stairwell doors weren't opening. Marcus burst into the lobby from the back hallway, panting. I tried the north stairs. Locked. Same with the west. The manager looked pale. Okay, the override system, it should. She tapped the touchscreen frantically. Nothing changed. God, I think the panel's frozen. Someone shouted. A child began to cry. A woman tried to pry open a stair door by hand. Metal screamed. Didn't budge. And Thomas, he walked behind the front desk. Knelt. Lifted a portion of the marble flooring. A panel only he knew opened. Inside, a steel switchbox, dusty, untouched for years. He used the same small screwdriver from a flood. Removed the screws. Flipped the manual override. Then typed 6 digits into the recessed keypad above it. Click, click, click. 3 stairwell doors, across 3 floors, unlocked at once. Fans kicked in. Ventilation hummed to life. Emergency lights flickered, then steadied. Marcus stood frozen. What the hell? Thomas stood, dusted off his hands. Go upstairs. Guide them down. Start with the kids. How did you? Later. People began pouring into the stairs. Not chaotic now. Just fast. Organized. Instinctively trusting the invisible thread, holding it all together. Marcus moved floor to floor. Guiding. Calming. In his headset, he heard updates from maintenance, from fire control. They were 10 minutes out. They didn't need to rush. Because somehow, the building had already been stabilized. When the last resident cleared the top floor, Thomas checked the main panel one more time. No red lights. Smoke thinning. Structure holding. No injuries. No flames. No failure. Outside, the fire department arrived. Too late to save the day. But just in time to see that it had already been saved. The manager stood on the curb, clutching a clipboard. Still trembling. Who did the override? No one answered. Then Marcus spoke. Thomas. The desk guy. Yeah. She stared. But how? Marcus looked at her. Not angry. Just tired. Ask him. But no one did. Not right away. People returned to their units. Thankful. Shaken. They passed Thomas one by one. Some nodded. Some murmured. Thank you. Didn't know. I'm sorry for. Thomas didn't wave it off. But he didn't hold it either. He just stood there. Still. Present. Whole. That night, he stayed late. Just to walk the halls. One last check. Felt the walls like a medic reading a pulse. Everything was holding. For now, in the elevator mirror, he saw himself. Not in uniform. Just a man. Older. Tired. Exactly where he needed to be. He looked at his own reflection and whispered, "You remembered." Later, in the empty lobby, Marcus brought him a cup of coffee. Didn't say much. Just handed it over and sat on the edge of the desk. After a while, he asked, "Why didn't you let anyone know before? That you were the guy? The one who built this place?" Thomas sipped the coffee. Because they didn't need that version of me. And now, he looked out the window. Lights blinking against the night. Smoke cleared. Silence returned. Now they know I was always here. Raymond Carter couldn't sleep. For a man who prided himself on control. Over meetings, portfolios, espresso temperature. He suddenly found himself unsettled by something he didn't understand. Not the fire. Not the panic. But the stillness. That image. Thomas, standing behind the desk. Hands steady. Eyes calm. Moving through chaos like he'd lived it before. And somehow, he had. Raymond replayed it in his mind. The smoke. The doors locked. The fear tightening in his chest. And then, the click. The air shifting. The fans humming back to life. And the quiet man they all ignored. The one he had mocked. Walking back to his post like it was just another Tuesday. He hadn't spoken to him since. Hadn't thanked him. Hadn't apologized. Not because he didn't want to, but because he didn't know how. What do you say to someone you treated like scenery? Only to find out he built the stage you're standing on. So he avoided it. Went to work. Took the long route to the elevator. Avoided eye contact. But it didn't help. Thomas was there. Every morning, every evening, same seat, same nod, same silence. Until one morning, Raymond froze mid-step. Thomas wasn't at the desk. Not on break. Not out of sight. Just not there. His stomach clenched. Not panic. Just something close to guilt. Maybe he called out. Maybe he quit. Maybe it was because of people like me. The thought burned. But 10 minutes later, Thomas returned, holding a potted plant. Someone had overwatered it upstairs. He was helping transfer it to the light. Raymond exhaled and laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was the first moment in weeks he realized just how much space this man occupied in his mind. That night, he made a decision. Small, maybe silly, but real. He stopped by the local print shop, ordered a plaque. Simple. No gold trim. No marble base. Just black letters on brushed steel. The next morning, at 6:45, he waited until the lobby was quiet. Walked to the front desk. Thomas looked up. Morning. Raymond nodded, cleared his throat, held out the small box. This isn't much, and I don't expect anything back. But I wanted to say, I've been wrong, and I see you now. Thomas looked at the box, opened it, read the plaque inside, then looked back at Raymond. Not surprised, not cold, just present. You don't owe me anything. I know, but I needed to do this anyway. Thomas nodded once, gently closed the box. Didn't say thank you. Didn't need to. Some silences don't ask for more. Raymond left, hands lighter, breath easier. The next day, the plaque appeared on the front of the desk, fixed discreetly, cleanly. It read, Thomas H. Collier, site engineer, protector, still here. Nothing more, nothing less. Residents noticed. Some asked, some didn't, but they saw it, and they saw him. That afternoon, a boy from the 8th floor, headphones always in, hoodie always up, stopped at the desk. Yo, you really design buildings? Thomas smiled. Sometimes. That's dope. Then the boy left. No explanation, just respect. Unspoken, uncoached. Even the building manager softened. Not dramatically, not suddenly, but one day, she paused at the desk and said, if we ever expand the tower, I'd like you on the planning committee. Thomas raised an eyebrow. After hours? Paid hours. He chuckled. We'll talk. Later that week, Raymond saw Marcus in the hallway. The kid was lugging cleaning supplies, singing under his breath. They nodded at each other. Nothing big, but not nothing. Because that's how it starts, Raymond realized. Not with speeches. Not with performance. Just with one decision. One small moment where you choose to act differently. Not because you have to, but because silence finally feels heavier than the words. No one told them to change. There were no emails. No community-wide announcements. No new rules posted in elevators. But the air shifted. Subtle. Like the pressure dropping before a storm. Except this time, it wasn't a storm. It was a quiet thaw. The first sign. People started using his name. Morning, Thomas. Thanks, Thomas. Appreciate it, Mr. Collier. Not everyone. Not all at once. But more than before. Enough to notice. Enough to feel. Marcus felt it first. One morning, a resident who never used to speak paused by the desk. She didn't say much. Just, is Thomas in today? As if it mattered. As if his absence now meant something. Marcus smiled. He'll be in by 6. The woman nodded, waited in the lobby until he arrived, said nothing else, just sat. At 6:03, Thomas stepped through the glass doors. The woman rose, met his eyes. I'm glad you're here. That was it. No explanation, just presence meeting presence, and recognition blooming in the space between them. Others followed, not loudly, not performatively, just differently. One brought him tea. Another offered him her umbrella when the weather shifted. Someone sent a thank you card, unsigned, handwritten in block letters. You held more than the door. Thomas didn't say much in return. He didn't have to. At the annual HOA meeting, usually filled with complaints about parking spots and noise levels, someone stood up and asked, Can we officially acknowledge Thomas for what he did during the elevator fire? The room went quiet. Then someone else added, "He's the reason my daughter got out safe." Then another, "He fixed the system before the fire team even got here. We all owe him." A motion was made, seconded, passed, unanimous. The next day, a framed photo appeared in the lobby. Thomas mid-step, keyring in hand, candid, unstaged. Below it, in quiet, he kept us whole. Thomas didn't ask who put it up, didn't take it down either. Even the building felt different. Or maybe people just moved through it more softly. They greeted the cleaners, by name, held the door an extra second longer, tipped without waiting to be seen. Small things. Things that had always mattered, but now landed with more weight. The young boy from HC started hanging out near the desk after school. Thomas didn't mind. He let the boy flip through an old book of building designs, blueprints, elevations, handwritten notes and pencil. "You made all this?" the boy asked. "I helped." "Can I learn?" Thomas looked at him. "If you're patient." The boy nodded, sat straighter, didn't speak again for 5 minutes. But when he did, it was with a question about structural load, and Thomas smiled. Raymond Carter, now quieter in posture if not in personality, started stopping by just to chat, sometimes awkward, always sincere. "You know, Thomas, I've worked in systems my whole life, but I never saw a person become one until I saw you during the fire." Thomas didn't answer, just offered him the same pen he always used. "Write that down. Might make a good start for something real." Raymond laughed, but he did. Marcus noticed the ripple too. The way new hires treated the job differently when they met Thomas. The way other staff watched him with a kind of respect they didn't speak out loud, but copied in posture and pace and calm. One janitor started carrying a notebook like Marcus's. Another started arriving 10 minutes early. Nobody called it mentorship, but that's what it was. A form of passing knowledge by osmosis. Even the building manager, tightly wound, schedule-obsessed, began pausing more. She'd walk past the desk, stop, sometimes ask Thomas for his opinion on upcoming projects. He never volunteered, but when asked, he always knew more than anyone else in the room. Eventually, she just said, "You should have been running this lobby years ago." He looked at her. I was not bitter, just fact. She nodded, didn't argue, didn't need to. And maybe that was the biggest change. Not that people praised him now, but that they believed him now. Believed he had always been what he was. That it wasn't new. It was just finally seen. One night, a storm rolled through the city. Lightning, rain against the windows, power flickers. People in the lobby tensed. Some looked toward the desk instinctively. Thomas was already moving, checking the subpanel, listening to the timing of the backup generator. The power stayed on. The lights held. But the trust, that's what stayed brightest. And in all of it, Thomas never asked for anything. Not a promotion, not a raise, not recognition, only the space to do what needed doing. And finally, he had that. Sometimes, in the evenings, he'd sit by the window of the break room, blueprints on his lap, notebook beside him, eyes soft, not nostalgic, not proud, just still. Because stillness wasn't what you had when nothing happened. It was what you built when everything had, and you were still there. The story didn't go viral. There was no trending hashtag, no video clip racking up millions of views, no podcast episode titled "The Doorman Who Saved a Building." But it moved, quieter than the internet, slower than a rumor, deeper than either. It moved through conversation. A neighbor told a friend, "You know that building on Westbridge, the one with the fire scare?" "Yeah, turns out the guy at the desk used to be the engineer. He fixed everything while the rest of us panicked." The friend told their cousin. The cousin told a coworker, and so on. The facts changed slightly, but the heart stayed true. He was there. He knew what to do. No one saw it coming. One woman, after hearing the story at a dinner party, mentioned it to her teenage daughter. The girl didn't say much at the time, just nodded, went quiet. 3 weeks later, She submitted her early application to the School of Architecture at the university. In her personal statement, she wrote, "I want to be the kind of person who builds things that last and who stays, even when no one remembers they were the one who built it." Her mother never asked where she got those words, but she kept the application in a drawer, folded with care. A maintenance supervisor from another luxury complex asked his manager, "Do we have any original blueprints for our systems? Or anyone who still understands them?" The manager shrugged. "Why? Just heard about a guy who knew everything about his building from decades ago. Saved it. No one knew who he was until it was almost too late." They started making calls. An intern in the mayor's office, new to city planning, heard the story from a neighbor. She looked up old zoning documents, found Thomas's name, found the design specs, found quiet brilliance tucked into pages no one had opened in years. She brought up in a meeting, maybe we should start cataloging the engineers, not just the architecture firms. The room paused, and someone wrote it down. Meanwhile, Thomas kept showing up to work. Same hour, same seat. No idea his name was moving through coffee shops, office break rooms, classrooms, and planning boards. He didn't need to know. In a community college not far from Westbridge, Marcus gave a guest talk. Small group, all first-year students. Facilities Management 101. He told them about pressure gauges, about fire panels. Then, near the end, he hesitated. Said, "I used to think this kind of work didn't matter. Just floors and light bulbs and trash cans. Then I met someone who saved a building and never raised his voice doing it." A student raised her hand. Did they give him an award or something? Marcus smiled. "Nah, he doesn't need one. He is one." That same week, a professor in Baltimore asked her students to write about a living person who embodied integrity. 2 students from different majors wrote about Thomas. They'd never met, but they'd heard the same story from different angles, and both used the same word to describe him: necessary. A local artist painted a piece titled Load-Bearing. It wasn't of a building. It was of a man. Back straight, face unreadable, hands open, palms up. Underneath the quote, he held more than we knew. It was displayed at a street-level gallery near the train station. Thomas passed it once, paused, looked at it, didn't stop long, but long enough to smile. Inside Westbridge, things continued their quiet evolution. One resident left a sticky note each Monday. Quotes, sometimes scripture, sometimes literature, sometimes just a sentence. Still waters carry the heaviest stones. Some foundations move and never crack. The builder doesn't always wear the suit. Thomas didn't know who left them, never took them down, just read them, folded them, filed them away. In December, a fire department lieutenant dropped by the building, not on duty, just curious. "You Thomas?" "I am. We ran a drill last week. Your override system's on the training docket now." Thomas nodded. "Took long enough." The lieutenant laughed. "Would have saved us 20 minutes if we had your setup at half the places we serve. Tell them to call next time." By spring, a new hire started shadowing Thomas, an intern from a city. Fresh, nervous, full of questions. Thomas didn't talk much at first. Then one day, as they watched the mailroom jam for the 3rd time, he said, "See that sensor on the left? It's not broken. It's just blind in direct sunlight." The intern blinked. "You want me to fix it?" "No, I want you to remember it. Fixing's easy. Knowing where to look, that takes longer." The intern wrote that down in a notebook he'd bought just for this job. One evening, as the sun poured in gold across the lobby floor, Thomas sat in silence. Marcus approached.